This is our topic of focus today. Go over to your gaming shelf and pick out your favorite game. Odds are it's either relatively new, something released on somewhat of a recent console, or if not, it's probably some game that corporate figureheads at some multi-billion-dollar company decided to slap a fresh coat of paint on this puppy and call it a brand new experience. And sometimes it's both. But are these games really in need of a remaster? Does buying a game like this really justify a $60, hell, even a $70 experience? What is the right price for a remaster? Is this even a remaster? Is this a remake? Sometimes it's not even both. Sometimes it's called a reimagining. And that's the question I'm here to find out today. There are a lot of video games and dozens of ways to play each one. With games becoming more portable and a catalog of adventures spanning over 40 years, can you really blame developers for wanting to make a quick buck off of this? No, I'm not here to discuss the moralities of taking an old product and bringing it forward to a new audience. I am always going to hold in high regard when a company decides they want to bring forward an old experience and bring it forward to a new generation. There's always an exception. No, I'm referring to when is it a good idea to bring an old idea back? When does a company cross the line by saying, yeah, so remember that title for a game that nobody remembers? Boom, here's the word HD written on it for $60. Not enough? Take the word remake if you want it too. Or how about 2.8 Final Remix featuring Dante from Devil May Cry, Royal Deluxe. And thus the confusion begins. So let's go ahead and talk about remasters versus remakes. A remaster is when a game company takes this dearly beloved title, overhauls the pre-existing assets, and adds a fresh coat of paint. Isn't it beautiful? A remake is when a company takes an old adventure sitting in the past and completely recreates the experience from the ground up, typically using a new engine, new gameplay mechanics, music, models, voice actors, 1/3 of the entire game. It's not too difficult to distinguish the two, but I feel like some companies want to tiptoe the line between what is a remaster and a remake, like Resident Evil 2. That is a remake. You're taking an already established story, bringing it forward to a new generation with a new style of gameplay that you've adopted from recent entries in the series. This is a game that stands completely on its own. Catherine Full Body being marketed as a remake of the original game because it has added dialogue options, added puzzle mechanics, and 3 times the amount of sexual libido on the box. This isn't a fresh new take on an old classic. This is your ex-girlfriend looking for a one-night stand. Companies do this because the word remake sounds better than the term remaster, re-release, remind, as in remind me not to spend $60 on the 20 gazillionth Kingdom Hearts collection to come out this holiday season. Remake, you can put that on anything, slap it on a bowl of chili. Van Camp's remaster? That just sounds like you just reheated it in the microwave. I remember reading this interview from the developers of Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy, stating that Crash's first jump to HD was not a remake, but a reimagining, using a brand new engine to create a 1-to-1 scale of Crash Bandicoot while bringing more precise controls, better graphics, improved save states, time trials for the first 2 games, Coco as a playable character. It's a damn remake. Don't try and sugarcoat it. But despite that, this is exactly what I expect from a remake. Hell, this is what I would expect from bringing any sort of games forward to a brand new generation. When I think of a remake, I think of taking an old console that wasn't truly capable of handling the hardware it was capable of and putting it on a new home where it can stretch the absolute limits of the original designer's imagination, adding that last bit of polish that may or may not have been available at the time. This could be something as simple as save states, which were far less abundant in the early Genesis and NES era. You ever tried playing any retro game without save states? There's a reason Diddy Kong is in newer games and the alphabet is not. Smoother gameplay, as many of these older games at the time were coming over from arcades to home consoles that didn't have the power to run them as well as they accurately should. Bringing older games to a new audience should not only be able to preserve the experience, but improve that title for a brand new audience. This is a natural progression of media. It's no different than older films being remade into brand new experiences, or that old diner being torn down to build up a brand new Chili's. Nowadays, remakes are just a cash grab. Hey guys, I know we just released this game last year, but fuck it. It's in 4K now. How about we release this last system game exclusively on a brand new console, but this one has exclusive DLC that you can't get on your old console, and it's in 4K. Also, you guys want to go see Avatar in theaters for the 19th time? Because we gotta milk this puppy for all that we've got, baby. Every game under the sun has to have a damn remake, but why would I get so stressed out about this? I'm just being a little bitch about it. So let's go back to the topic at hand. When does a game deserve a remake or a re-release? I personally think the best time to do a re-release is when it becomes somewhat difficult to find said game on a newer platform. Now, our two versions of difficult might differ. I can go to local game stores and find almost any game I want for any platform, but a lot of people don't have that luxury. When you start seeing online shops start to close or older generation games start going off store shelves, it's not too difficult for somebody like myself to either go online and find that game, emulate it to my gaming computer, or get in my car and drive to a retro gaming store and find it. I feel like so many people forget about these island countries, rural areas, the young school-age demographic that doesn't have the luxury to just find these games and get their hands on them if they really want to. A lot of times, once these games are gone from online shops, there's no way that those without access to them can get these games back. I can't get too mad at many of these Wii U titles getting Switch releases when the Switch has already sold 10 times the amount and has a larger market base than any Nintendo console before it. Now, as to why this game released at $40 and this game released for $60, now that's just bad business at that point. I also believe that once the cost of a game starts going up instead of going down due to the scarcity of that product, Nintendo, I think that's an acceptable time to start re-releasing your games. I bought Rhythm Heaven Fever the other week for $110 on eBay. Get your shit together, Nintendo. Why Nintendo has a mountain of GameCube games just festering in the vault somewhere, not being sold to saps like me who'd buy a Kirby Air Ride Deluxe for $60 if they just added online functionality? I repeat, get your shit together, Nintendo. Now, for a remake, a from-the-ground-up remodeling, re-rendering, whatever you want to add to your title starts to make sense when a re-release seems acceptable and the game starts to display problems of the time period it was in. Now, for each console generation, it is a little bit different. There's a much bigger generational leap between the 64 and the GameCube than there is with the PS4 and the PS5. And tell me which PlayStation console this is running on. Get everybody who got it wrong. When a game starts to show its age, you'll know that it might be time for a full-scale remake of some kind. Take Metroid Samus Returns. This is a 3DS remake of Metroid 2 released in 2017 by Mercury Steam. While it's obvious to see why an 8-bit game on a handheld console from 1991 would be remade, this came out at the perfect time. It was at a time where it had been 13 years since the last 2D Metroid, 7 years since the last true Metroid experience, that at the time wasn't very well received. Not only that, but it also added elements introduced in Metroid Zero Mission, one of the most beloved titles in the entire series. Makes you almost forget that this was just a passing title and make you forget that this series hasn't made its way over to the current gen consoles. But what about a much lesser jump? What about Metal Gear Solid to Metal Gear Solid The Twin Snakes? Only one console generation between the two, but don't be fooled. These are two completely different experiences. The Twin Snakes takes the normal story, the gameplay, the environment from the first Metal Gear Solid and combines them with the more third-person gameplay style of the second game, Sons of Liberty. And it is extremely clear to see how much of a difference 5.5 years can make in the grand scheme of things. But you don't have to rewrite every single thing about a game's coding and engine just to be able to bring it over to a new market. Sometimes one simple thing can make an entire game's existence totally worth it. The Final Fantasy series received the remaster treatment back in the early PS4 era, with Final Fantasy X and Final Fantasy XII both getting HD remasters. Now, are these truly justified and change much about the base game other than smoother gameplay and skippable cutscenes? No. But you'd be surprised how much adding a simple element can increase the replay value of a game. Both games include a speed up feature, taking much of the mundane and unnecessary grinding out of the experience, and let me tell you, I wish this was in every RPG moving forward. Some games decide to take their pre-existing games and release multiple remastered versions of those games at the same time. We know Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2 aren't worth $60 on their own, so hey, let's release them again with 4 other games shoved into the package. Now fasten your seatbelts because I'm about to say something slightly controversial. Activision actually did a good job at this. Oh, thank goodness. I thought it was gonna be way worse. These 4 games are some of the best remastered experiences I have ever had the pleasure of playing. Each of these games are fully made from the ground up recreations of their original product. Every single game is a collection of multiple games to make sure that you don't run out of content, and every single one of them retailed for $40 upon release. This was a smart business move. Not only was this an attempt to taking some old classics and being able to make some profit off of it, but taking these old beloved classics and trying to bring them back into the mainstream market. Seeing how well Crash Bandicoot 4 did, I feel like this was completely worth the son of a bitch. Let's just talk about Crash Nitro Fueled. Here you have all 16 of the tracks in the original game and every single character now being playable for the first time in a brand new engine, but now we have every single soundtrack from the sequel Crash Nitro Kart, all of these characters playable, new characters and courses coming every single month, including an entire track pass dedicated to Spyro. The Reignited Trilogy, having fully orchestrated music being once again composed by original composer Stuart Copeland of The Police. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 remastered, bringing back nearly every single song in the original 2 games, but adding a brand new soundtrack alongside of it, a far more fleshed out park editor, multiple missions, a speedrun mode. This is the right way to do a remaster slash remake slash reimagining slash whatever the f you want to call it. This is not. You know, every time Sonic comes out with a brand new entry, I always wonder how they're gonna f it up. And might I say, every single time I am pleasantly surprised. The Sonic Colors birthed itself into the world in 2010, I'm still working on getting that far, and was met with fairly positive reviews. It had a good level of polish, it was a nice time. The point is, it didn't look like this. Yeah, I don't really see a problem with this. Like, how do you mess this up? The game is already there. You've got the formula. The cake is already made. All you've got to do is decorate it and make it look nice. So what the f is this? The graphics speak for themselves. The audio is unintelligible at times. Sometimes the audio just doesn't come in at all. The controls arguably feel worse over 10 years later. If you told me the controller on the left was an upgrade, I would laugh at you. Sometimes remakes aren't all that's cracked up to be. For example, I'm not too big of a fan of cleaner pixel art. Like, it looks smoother, but at some point I feel like it kind of takes away from the authenticity of the original experience. It's kind of like when you take those anime intros and artificially make them 60 frames per second in 4K. This honestly hurts my eyes. I'd rather just see the entire intro remade in Microsoft Paint at that point. Conkers Bad Fur Day received the HD remaster treatment with Conkers Reloaded on the Xbox 360 and... I guess this is what they call animal cruelty now. The first game felt so raw and unhinged because it was this cute little parody on mascot characters talking out of his ass, so making his model look arguably worse, it just doesn't feel right to me. If anything, you just insulted the drunk little squirrel. But all of these remasters, good or bad, still doesn't answer the question, when does a game truly deserve a remake? Is it 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? And it looks like we finally reached our destination. Here we have what some call one of the greatest games of all time. A game praised for its amount of polish, its interactive storytelling, its innovation on being years ahead of its time. And here's some plastic that cost $70. I've seen nothing but backlash upon this release, and I do have to say, this looks immaculate. Some of the textures and graphics Sony and Naughty Dog have been able to inject into this remake is out of this world. The amount of small details that can be changed to add that extra sense of realism when combined with a realistic set of characters is honestly brilliant and amazing to see on a home console. But is it really worth $70? Let me rephrase that. Is it really worth taking a large portion of your development team, placing them on an old project, remaking a game that already has an incredible amount of polish, while taking away the focus of making a brand new title from the ground up, and then still charging $70? I don't know. I obviously don't know the inner workings of Naughty Dog. Maybe they're not in that stage of development where their engine team needs to be fully utilized to work on the new game. Maybe they're just using their backup team. But I'd be lying if I don't feel like Naughty Dog just spit on my shoes and then gave them a little spit shine. We're not adding extra cutscenes. We're not adding extra music. To my knowledge, there are no additional dialogue options. I mean, you've got a few subtle changes, like Tess pointing the gun at Ellie during this interaction when they figure out what her plot relevance is. There are the obvious graphical improvements and subtle differences to gameplay as far as how the camera moves itself, accessibility options, and how the enemies perceive our presence. I can't deny the sheer brilliance of the team at Naughty Dog for continuing to outdo themselves, but for $70? $20 more than the original game? I mean, I could buy Miitopia and Backman repack for the same price, and those games aren't nearly as accessible. The Last of Us is only 9 years old and 2 console generations, but a game should get a remake when it's called for and when it's worth it. I mean, Demon's Souls is a prime example, released during the same console generation and being posed as a launch title for the PS5 2 years prior to The Last of Us Part 1. Do me a favor, play Last of Us on the PS3 and then play Demon's Souls on the same console. It's the difference between a banquet meal and eating at Chili's. When the tool tools of a game become outdated when the game starts to show its age. That's the time when a game deserves a remake. When a game is no longer accessible to the general public and scarcity makes the game far more in demand, that's when I think it's a smart decision for a publisher to start thinking about bringing that title to a brand new console generation. Which led me to create my own list of games that I believe are worthy of either a remaster or a remake. Other than the 30 times the Rhythm Heaven Fever's listed on here, I think I've come up with a pretty good list of what we can do. Now, obviously that is a joke. I only had room for 13. Rhythm Heaven, like, come on. Nintendo doesn't have a rhythm game on the Switch to call its own. You've got over 100 songs between Rhythm Heaven Fever, and Rhythm Heaven Megamix, and you can recreate an art style like this in seconds. I am begging you to make a brand new Rhythm Heaven. Metal Gear Solid 1, 2, or 3, it doesn't matter. Hideo Kojima and Konami managed to create stories that are so ahead of their time that it is a criminal offense that these games are not in the hands of today's gaming space. Super Mario RPG, you look at the price on eBay and how badly people want to ride Gino, and tell me this game doesn't deserve a remaster or a remake. Eternal Darkness Sanity's Requiem. Do you know how absolutely terrifying it would be to take the new age mechanics of video games combined with the psychological acid trip of a video game that actively tries to f with the player? Shadow the Hedgehog, mainly because I want to see the Sonic community actively their pants. Snowboard Kids 1 and 2. These are just hidden gems that need to be brought into a new light. They're such a fun little nod to a time when creativity really shined in the video game space. Fallout New Vegas, because I believe the Fallout community has a hit out on Todd Howard, and I'm totally not being paid right now to say this. Nah, I'm just messing with you. It's still the same list. Billy Hatcher and the Giant Egg, because damn it, it's always been a dream of mine to roll around on a giant chicken egg on the go. Perfect Dark, because I think 10% of the collective internet space would absolutely freak out, and the other 90% would say, what the f is a Perfect Dark? But of course, I would be an absolute abomination if I didn't state the one game that I believe deserved a remake above all others. I mean, come on! Hello, it is 4 o'clock in the morning and I don't have anything better to do, and you got the little lines coming up on the camera, so here's your blooper. Okay, bye!